Hello and welcome to a fresh new edition of the Global Reset with me, Prashant Nair. You're with us here on CNBC-TV18 Prime. This is the show where we try and understand the complex forces shaping our global economy, politics, and of course, the future of capital. Each day we pick up a different topic, but for the last few days, we've been, of course, on the big story, which is the conflict in the Middle East, the escalations continuing for what is the sixth day between Iran and Israel. We're going to sort of, get our experts to tell us what next in just a bit from now. But let me just set you up with what's the latest in terms of what we've heard and seen overnight in West Asia, and of course, what the situation is at the current moment. Tensions between Iran and Israel have entered the sixth day, as I said, with both countries launching new missile strikes at each other last night. The Israeli ministry has said that it has conducted strikes on 12 missile launch sites and storage facilities in Tehran. At least 224 people have been killed since Israel began bombing Iran on Friday, as per the Iranian state media. While Iranian retaliatory strikes have killed at least 24 people in Israel. The US, the United States, has also intensified its involvement in the conflict. The US President Donald Trump, who left a day earlier from the G7 summit in Canada to attend to the tensions in West Asia to perhaps oversee the crisis out of Washington, D.C., took to the social media platform Truth Social to warn Iran for, what he essentially wanted, an unconditional surrender. That's a quote. Trump added that the U.S. knows the exact location of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and has the ability to strike, but is choosing not to, at least for now, for the safety of civilians and American soldiers. All this in that social media post. In another post, he also added that the U.S. now has complete and total control of the skies over Iran, adding that Iran's defense systems are no match for American military technology. A U.S. official has also confirmed the United States is now deploying additional fighter jets to West Asia. Israeli media has also reported that the U.S. is likely to join the war against Iran, but of course there's no confirmation to that point. Now, we are, of course, also tracking the other headline, which I think is garnering a fair bit of interest, and this is coming in from the U.S. The U.S. President Donald Trump is set to meet with Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff, Asim Munir, at the White House. This is according to U.S. media reports. This is going to be later today. Now, ahead of this meeting, Prime Minister Narendra Modi dialed U.S. President Donald Trump and spoke with him in a 35-minute conversation. Here is Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri with a briefing on what transpired between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi.
प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को स्पष्ट रूप से कहा कि 22 अप्रैल के बाद भारत ने आतंकवाद के खिलाफ कार्रवाई करने का अपना दृढ़ संकल्प पूरी दुनिया को बता दिया था। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने कहा कि 6-7 मई की रात को भारत ने पाकिस्तान और पाकिस्तान ऑक्यूपाइड कश्मीर में सिर्फ आतंकी ठिकानों को ही निशाना बनाया था। भारत के एक्शन बहुत ही मेजर्ड, प्रिसाइज और नॉन एस्केलेटरी थे। साथ ही भारत ने यह भी स्पष्ट कर दिया था कि पाकिस्तान की गोली का जवाब भारत गोले से देगा। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप को स्पष्ट रूप से कहा कि इस पूरे घटनाक्रम के दौरान कभी भी किसी भी स्तर पर भारत अमेरिका ट्रेड डील या अमेरिका द्वारा भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच मध्यस्थता जैसे विषयों पर बात नहीं हुई थी। सैन्य कार्रवाई रोकने की बात सीधे भारत और पाकिस्तान के बीच दोनों सेनाओं की एग्जिस्टिंग चैनल्स के माध्यम से हुई थी और पाकिस्तान के ही आग्रह पर हुई थी। प्रधानमंत्री मोदी ने जोर देकर कहा कि भारत ने न तो कभी मध्यस्थता स्वीकार की थी, न करता है और ना ही कभी करेगा।
Well, that coming in this morning, we have Anil Trigunayat. He's a veteran diplomat, former ambassador and distinguished fellow at the Vivekananda International Foundation. So great to have you with us here on the program. Thank you for joining us. Let me just sort of tackle what is, in that sense, new. This what the American media is reporting. The meeting is supposed to take place between President Trump and the Pakistani Army Chief. What do you make of it? Do you think this is likely to be in relation to the conflict which is underway right now? What is your sense?
Well, I think it is also related to the conflict because there have been statements that have been coming out from Pakistan that in case Iran is, bombed with some kind of a nuclear device, then Pakistan will intervene and bomb Israel. I mean, that is the thing they are saying. There is no guarantee, but this is how Pakistan is able to keep itself relevant in the bargain. And as you know, that they had hired this a very influential PR company which has arranged this visit. And as such, General Asim Munir and the CENTCOM chief have very good relations, and that's how this visit was planned. And the fact that President Trump is meeting the so-called Field Marshal Asim Munir states that they will like to buy some equipment, get some support, more support in return for keeping quiet in this bargain. Of course, Pakistan wants to show to the Islamic world that wherever the Islam is in danger, they are going to stand up. And that's how their bomb has been always projected. I mean, it was said to be Islamic bomb. And so I think that this is how they have made themselves relevant in this whole complex.
Mm. Do you think this has, any effect whatsoever? I mean, I spoke with somebody who tracks geoeconomics early in the morning, Marco Papik from BCA Research. He said, of course, Pakistan is of course, we all know, as you said, that this is how they try to keep themselves relevant. But you also have the this current U.S. administration under President Trump, where it's not about allies, not about friends, it's essentially self-interest. It's very transactional in that sense. Does this also have an effect on, you just heard our Foreign Secretary explaining the conversation between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. You think all that also sort of gets into play here?
Well, I'm quite sure that while Prime Minister Modi may have spoken to President Trump on several issues, and he also clarified India's position as far as the mediation and other aspects are concerned. But USA remains our global comprehensive strategic partner. And the kind of shifts that is being witnessed in recent times, for whatever reasons, maybe transactional or otherwise, is definitely a cause of concern, obviously. So I'm sure the Prime Minister Modi would have told President Trump about the terror dimension, essentially, of Pakistani state, which uses it as an instrument of its foreign policy against India. So that the clarity is very much there, and hopefully President Trump will tell Asim Munir to not use that as an instrument anymore if they want to continue to have some kind of assistance from the Americans. But since for the superpowers, especially the United States, everything is a part of the chess game, we'll have to see and figure out ourselves how things play out.
Mm. So let's just talk about now Iran, Israel, and let me ask you bluntly: do you think the U.S. will get involved?
Well, you see, there are two things. He has had unconditional surrender, which means that they sign on a deal, give up their, complete nuclear option in that sense, enrichment facility, their missile program, and everything, which I doubt very much that Iran would be able to do so. Iranians have been approaching all the countries, especially those who were involved with the JCPOA, the nuclear deal in the beginning in Europe, and only the foreign minister has spoken to them. So they are also approaching everybody so that there is some kind of a ceasefire that happens and everything is not completely decimated in the bargain. But I have no doubt that since United States' fundamental policy in the Middle East is essentially the safety and security of Israel. So if Israel is sometimes, let's say, this war comes on the receiving end, USA is bound to intervene.
I was just reading this comment on social media from the former IAEA chief, who essentially said that, when you say unconditional surrender and you put these things out, it's a message to pretty much everyone else. Also that maybe, the only way that you're going to be fully protected is to have is to be a nuclear power in that sense. So actually, in a way, it does the opposite as well. It's counterintuitive in that sense. What do you make of that argument, sir?
No, you are so right. I mean, in fact, the Ukrainians are repenting that they gave up their nuclear options. So everybody has become, because see, today there is no international order worth the name. Every country, small, medium, middle, bigger powers, everybody is indulging in unilateralism of all sorts. There is a defiance of whatever left of the international law. So obviously, every country tried to protect itself, and they think the nuclear option is the best option. And so you might see many other countries. Of course, if Iran were to acquire a nuclear weapon, which they say that they are not pursuing, then obviously there are other countries in the Middle East who will be looking at it. We have seen statements coming from Turkey. We have seen statements coming from Saudi Arabia in the past, where they all want to have certain kind of a nuclear option as well. So then already we have enough weapons to destroy the whole world many times. And then so it will become far more fragile, whatever left of this order.
It's a delicate diplomatic situation as well as this war continues, this conflict continues from an Indian perspective, right? The historical relations with Iran, there's, of course, Israel is a close ally. How do you see this progressing from our side?
You see, for us, essentially, this is, in my view, the stability and security of the whole region, West Asian, has existential connotations for us. For the simple reason, because we depend a great deal on the energy security from there, 70 to 80%. Economic engagement is very strong. We have the 9.5 million Indians whose security, safety is of utmost importance to us. Already we have started evacuating people from Iran and Israel. Then you have people, the ease of navigation, which is like all these straits, Hormuz and Bab el-Mandab and others. So this all impacts on India directly in that sense. And that is precisely the reason that India issued the statement, both our partner countries, and they should sit down and resolve all issues through dialogue and diplomacy. So that is normal. India has also offered to play a negotiating role if needed, or at least some kind of a facilitation. Prime Minister Modi has spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's explained his rationale. And also Dr. Jaishankar has spoken to both the foreign ministers, his counterparts, and trying to help, join the other efforts to ease the tensions.
No, absolutely, a point taken. Just one last sort of, in a way, question, sir. Do you think there are there have been questions raised about where China is in all of this, whether this becomes a proxy kind of a conflict once again. Do you think we need to be worried about those things?
Well, China obviously is a very big power in the region. They have very close relations with Iran. So does Russia. They have just signed an agreement recently, as you know. So they will be supporting Iran. But to what extent is something to be seen. Today, Russia is very keen on mediating between Iran and Israel. But in my view, the mediation can only happen if Russians prevail upon Iranians and the Americans prevail upon Israelis. I mean, that's the only way. No one country has the capacity to deal with both at the same time. So therefore, US-Russia role could be more important. China has very clearly sided with Iran in this war. They've condemned this Israeli aggression. And there are reports that they are also providing whatever assistance is necessary to the Iranians.
So it's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us, and safe flight back home. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much.
On the program. Well, what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll look at more closely at the one dimension that Mr. Anil Trigunayat earlier spoke about from an Indian perspective, which is energy security. And I'll invite a guest to talk to us about that. But here's Marco Papik, Chief Strategist at BCA Research. Earlier in the day, I spoke to him in terms of what his thoughts are on where oil prices are headed. Listen and take that break and see you on the other side.
In the near term, I can definitely see oil prices going to 85, maybe even 90. But here's the fact. It doesn't really matter what Israel does. It doesn't matter what the US does. For investors, the only country that we should be focused on is Iran. Because it's very simple. Iran is either going to try to take oil barrels off the global market by interjecting the flow of oil through the Straits of Hormuz. It's either going to try to intervene in the shipment and the production of energy, or it's not. And if it does start to impact the flow of oil out of the Straits of Hormuz and out of the Middle East to the rest of the world, it's going to invite a pretty significant retaliation by the US against it. This is not a reason to be bearish equities. Now, I hear some clients say, yes, but this could significantly impact inflation and therefore central bank monetary policy calculus. And I just think to myself, what central bank governor or president is going to hike interest rates because of a conflict in the Middle East that is temporary in nature? I expect another 20% decline in the US dollar against major currencies over the next 3 years. And so we're at the beginning innings of that move.
Welcome back. You're with us here on the Global Reset. You're watching CNBC TV18 Prime. As promised, let's talk about oil prices. Richard Redoglia is CEO at Matrix Global. Richard, good to have you with us here back on the program. Thanks very much. Prashant here. There is this almost unsaid confidence, or maybe sometimes loudly said as well, that this is not going to escalate significantly. Although, I don't know if you heard Marco Papic earlier, he was saying maybe, it heads a little higher. But general almost consensus that we shoot up a little bit more, but we are headed lower. Eventually, we are headed a lot lower. What's your sense? How do you look at this entire situation from an oil price prism?
I think that is the perspective, right? The perspective is that we have about 5.5 to 6 million barrels of excess capacity in the world. We have U.S. oil production hitting near peaks around 13.5 million. We've got new production coming offshore Guyana and Brazil. One of the important things that we see, unlike what's happened over the past, is information technology. Information technology is such that every barrel of oil is tracked on the water now. You know exactly where barrels are, where they're going, what's on them. And so in this situation, unlike the first war, the first Iran war and Iraq War in 1980, Gulf War II, Gulf War I in 92, which saw prices spike to around $40, which interestingly enough would be about $120 in today's dollars. And then the spike in 2003, and then ultimately the spike we just experienced in the Ukraine war. And even in the Ukraine war, where the prices made a significant move up, because there we were losing 8 million barrels a day almost instantaneously was the thought. But really what the key is this excess capacity and the information flow of the information now that's so available in the world. It's really calmed the market down. Forward volatility is much less than it used to be. What's interesting, it's not so much that oil prices are making us move to the upside, it's product prices. And the reason I say that is, well, there's 6 million barrels of excess, or 5 to 6 million barrels of excess crude capacity or crude production. There's only about 1 to 3 million barrels of excess refinery capacity. Iran has about 2.5 million barrels a day, which is around 2% of worldwide refined capacity, and I believe about 50% of that has been taken out already by the IDF. So where we're starting to see price movement, we're seeing it really more in product prices. Product prices are up about $14 a barrel, and crude prices are up around $9 to $10 a barrel from the initial spike. So you're right. There is this calmness. I think Marco, the prior speaker, said there is really the key would be an attack on the Strait of Hormuz. Ironically, coincidentally, whatever you want to say, there was a major collision in the Strait of Hormuz yesterday. 2 tankers, one from the dark fleet, which is really the way that oil is moved out of Iran on fleets that are not insured under the normal charters where sanctions are. It collided with another tanker. And so it seemed to be coincidental. Amazingly enough, that tanker, I think, is on fire, but it didn't close the Strait of Hormuz. So it's really a situation where the calmness is a function of excess capacity in the world and the ability for information to flow so rapidly.
And of course, also maybe a bit of a coming slowdown, right? For demand for energy, perhaps as global growth tapers off a little bit in the second half of the year. So it's not as if demand is shooting up. It's actually maybe slowing down at the margin, or at least expected to. So there is that element at the margin as well. Yeah,
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Mm,
What's interesting over the last year and a half is that OPEC has continued to have these forecasts of higher supply, higher demand versus
mm,
the IEA and everyone else. I think their demand next year is about 1.4 million barrels a day. I think what the key thing about is we just talked about demand more globally and more on a longitudinal basis is that this idea of peak demand is still being pushed out. The idea that we were going to see a significant increase in renewables replacing petroleum demand, it's not really happening. It's slowing down a little bit, but oil demand continues to rise. I think we're 104 million barrels a day now, projected to go to 105 next year, and on we go. The world continues to consume oil. It continues to not peak, and really, that's one of the key things that we're seeing is the ability of technology through drilling, the ability to find out what demand is in real time has removed the fear that you mentioned, rightly so, at the beginning of the question to me.
mm. If you were to put numbers to it, Richard, the Strait of Hormuz, what are the chances we see some serious disruption?
I, we could all flip a coin right now and ask. I think, the key thing is if you're Iran, do you cut off China? I think 50% of China's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz. Does does Iran really want to cut off China? I mean, the country that would be hurt the worst would be China. India would also suffer. The thing about India is India has, I think it's your current daily demand is about 5.5 million barrels a day. Your refined capacity is about 5.3 million barrels a day. So you're a very well balanced country as it relates to your ability to produce products and then the consumption of those products. But the market doesn't work like that. What you do to what you still import about 85% of your oil. So India would be hurt also by a closure of the Strait of Hormuz, but the real pain would be felt by China and other Arab countries. Now, does Iran care about Saudi Arabia? Probably not. Kuwait? Probably not. But other Arab countries, I mean UAE, there might be some concern. So it's above my pay grade to try to tell you what I think is going to happen in the Strait of Hormuz. It really is. I think we're really in a situation that um, they have a bigger fish to fry as far as how are they going to stop this attack and what's happening and how are they going to maintain some level of production at all. I mean, that's the key. Remember, 96% of all oil gets loaded at Khark Island,
Mm.
which is the export plant for the export facility for Iran. And here's something I'm thinking, and just as I say those words, it makes me think something. Why hasn't the IDF taken out Khark Island? It's interesting. Why not? What's the reason for that? Is it a belief that this has gone from stopping a nuclear program to regime change? And if there's going to be regime change, do you want to take out the one thing that's going to allow Iran to rebuild its country? Interesting thought,
It is indeed an interesting thought.
right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Richard, the other thing I was joking with someone yesterday is the amount of you talked about that information flow, right? The amount of
Yes.
impact. It's short-lived and those moves fade quickly. But the point is, markets move, right? When you get these posts from
Sure.
President Trump, one way or the other. So I'm sure people have figured out how to trade that as well, uh, even if for
You're
short bits.
exactly right. That's a perfect point. That's a really excellent point. Remember, it's just money flowing,
Mm,
right? I made a point on when I talked last, I think a couple days ago.
mm,
This market has been controlled by the shorts. The
mm,
shorts have controlled oil prices from 85 dollars all the way down to 57, I think, for WTI.
mm,
Now it's around 73, 74. But we're not anywhere different from where we were 3 years ago. This is the exact same price we were. So your point is exactly right. This is just money flowing off the tape, right?
mm,
You say something against Tesla and Tesla stock moves. You
mm,
say something against oil prices move. But people are not wedded to their positions here. I do
mm,
not believe people are building long-term positions at this moment in time. And again, a point I raised a couple days ago was it's not so much the price is $74 today, it is only $65 in December of this year.
Yeah.
So the market is significantly backwardated because the market views this as a kind of a short-term supply-demand balance that it's just not sure how it's going to end up.
No, absolutely. And I think very good points. Richard, since I have you, I'm just going to take a shot at this. Last night,
Yeah.
solar stocks in the US fell sharply. I don't know if you saw between 25 and 35% in some cases, First Solar, etc. And this was in the back of news that Senate Republicans are moving that bill to end green tax credits for wind and solar power producers. Uh, any thoughts at all? I mean, and by the way, overnight you also had news that there's a $1 billion tax credit for oil producers. I don't know if you saw that. So it's
Did
the
I did.
policy push is pretty clear, isn't it?
It is. I I'm an energy guy my whole life.
Mm.
I tend to look if you also look at renewables a little askew.
Mm.
We've seen major issues with the economics of renewables. We've seen the cost of solar and wind drop theoretically, but in reality, the subsidies have been massive. What we also are seeing of is a decline in electric car sales, both here and in Europe. So. Um, the Green Deal, which it was called, the Green Energy Deal, I think was it was really an inflation deal because the amount of money that it printed was theoretically going to be $300 billion, but Goldman Sachs came out and said it was going to be something like $2 trillion because the tax credits were unending. There was no end to how the tax credits were going to stop.
Yeah.
Once you started a project, you got that tax credit ad infinitum. And I think what this last budget bill said is that's not going to happen, and so that's it. Um, it's over now. I think for at least at this time, for the green energy bonanza that has been going on. I think I would not want to be long any kind of renewable stock at all.
That's pretty clear. Richard, a great conversation as always. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll continue to lean on your expertise in energy markets in the coming days and weeks as well as we track the developments in the Middle East. Thanks very much once again. Well, it's a wrap on this edition of the Global Reset. Thank you very much for staying with me. Keep watching CNBC TV 18 Prime.